Blue and red lights flashed across my driveway, but they weren't from real cops. They were cheap LED bars duct-taped to a golf cart. Two wannabe officers blocked my car like they'd just cornered a fugitive, shouting, "Step out of the vehicle." "Sir." I didn't know whether to laugh or call for backup, because the idiots trying to pull me over were from my own homeowners association. And the funniest part, the guy they'd just pulled over was the highway patrol. It all started a week earlier when I moved into Willow Creek Estates. Quiet streets, neat lawns, friendly neighbors, or so I thought. I'd just retired from the state highway patrol after 12 years. I'd seen Rex chases everything humanity had to offer. I wanted peace, a calm little cul-de-sac where my dog Bruno could chase squirrels and I could finally sleep without a radio in my ear. But Willow Creek had a different kind of noise, the kind that came from a clipboard and a fake smile. The first time I met her, she was already yelling. "Sir, you can't park that moving truck there," she barked from her porch. Blonde bun blue blazer and the sharp voice of someone who'd memorized every line in a rule book. "The HOA doesn't allow large vehicles overnight." I looked at the sun. It wasn't even down yet. "I'm unloading," I said. "Rules are rules," she shot back, scribbling something on her clipboard. "We enforce them strictly here." That was my introduction to Karen Reynolds, Queen of Willow Creek. The next morning I found a bright orange notice taped to my mailbox. Violation U-Haul overnight. Fine, $250. It had been less than 24 hours since I moved in. Bruno tilted his head like even he couldn't believe it. I laughed. "Welcome home, buddy." Over the next few days, Karen's little crusade continued. She complained about my fence repair's unapproved construction. She said Bruno's barking was a noise disturbance. One morning, I caught her measuring my trash bins with a ruler. Every time I saw her, that same smug smile spread across her face. My dad used to say, "You don't win a war by shouting louder, you win by being smarter." So I stayed calm. I waved. I even mowed the patch of grass by her mailbox just to keep the peace. Didn't matter, she kept coming. Then, one Saturday, I saw two golf carts parked at the entrance, each with neon vests and what looked like toy radar guns. I thought it was kids playing. Then one of them flagged me down. "Pull over," he shouted. I laughed, thought he was joking, but he wasn't. "You were doing 30 in a 25. Violation of HOA safety regulations." I stared at him. "You're HOA security." He nodded proudly. "Neighborhood Enforcement Division." I nearly lost it. "So, what's the fine? $100, he said, "payable to Willow Creek HOA. That was the moment I realized they weren't just annoying. They thought they were law enforcement. A few days later, I got another orange slip unsafe operation of a vehicle. That's when I stopped laughing. Karen wasn't going to stop, but neither was I. I'd spent my career dealing with people who thought they were above the law. Now I was dealing with one who thought she was the law. Then came the day everything exploded. I was driving home from the grocery store when I noticed two golf carts waiting near the gate. Karen stood beside them, arms folded, talking into a walkie-talkie like she was commanding a SWAT team. As soon as I turned in, they hit the siren's cheap, squealing little speakers. They followed me all the way to my driveway, lights flashing, shouting orders. "Step out of the vehicle, sir." I took a slow breath, rolled down my window, and said, "You sure about this?" Karen smirked. "You're in violation of Section 8B, excessive speed license, please." "All right," I said softly, "but you're not going to like what happens next." I opened my door, stepped out, boots, uniform, badge. Everything. Her face drained of color. The fake cops froze. "Ma'am," I said, sliding on my sunglasses, "you just pulled over the highway patrol." The street went silent. Her clipboard hit the ground. I think I even heard someone gasp from a window. I walked up to her slowly. "Next time," I said, "call real law enforcement, not your golf cart SWAT team." She didn't answer. She just stormed off. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. That night, the HOA group chat lit up with her incident report. According to her, a suspicious man impersonating law enforcement had threatened the HOA board. By morning, half the neighborhood thought I was a fake cop. The other half thought she'd lost it. And for the first time I started to doubt myself. I'd moved here for peace, not war. Maybe I should have ignored her. Maybe I was stirring things up. For a moment I actually wondered if it was worth fighting. Then I saw a new notice on my door violation impersonation under review. And that's when something clicked. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to threaten. I was going to let the truth speak. The next morning, I dressed in full uniform badge shining and drove through the neighborhood lights on. Every curtain moved. Every phone came out. By the time I parked at the HOA office, a crowd had gathered. Karen froze when she saw me. "Morning," I said pleasantly. "Heard there's a report about me impersonating law enforcement." Her mouth opened, but before she could speak, I held up my ID. State seal, photo, badge number. The crowd murmured. "Next time," I said, "verify before you accuse." That should have been the end. But people like her don't stop, they double down. Soon came the texts. "You may be the highway patrol, but this is still my neighborhood." Then my mailbox vanished, stolen. The next morning there was a note taped to the post, "Mailbox does not meet community standards." It wasn't even subtle anymore. Then came the drone. A tiny white quad hovering over my backyard, circling like a mosquito. I filmed it and took it to the sheriff's office. The deputy shook his head. "She can't do that. You want to press charges?" I said no, not yet. Let her dig her hole. By now the neighborhood was split. Some neighbors waved supportively. Others hid behind curtains. But the tide was turning. One night, Jim, the guy from 3 houses down, brought me coffee. "We're with you," he said. "She's been running this place like a kingdom for years." I nodded. Then maybe it's time someone reminded her we live in a democracy. Karen didn't like that idea. She showed up the next morning with 2 board members and said, "You're required to attend a disciplinary hearing tonight." When I walked into the clubhouse, it was standing room only. Karen sat at the front like a judge, microphone in hand. "Mr. Davis," she began, "has repeatedly defied HOA regulations and impersonated law enforcement." Gasps from the crowd. I stood up slowly. "Ma'am, I am law enforcement." I showed my ID again. She smirked. Anyone could print that online. I took a deep breath. "If you're accusing a state officer of fraud, I suggest you think very carefully before you continue." The room went silent. One of the board members whispered, "Karen, maybe we should reconsider quiet," she snapped. But it was too late. The crowd was shifting. Neighbors started murmuring. Someone clapped. Someone else said, "We've had enough." Karen slammed her clipboard shut. Meeting adjourned and stormed out. For a second, I thought she might actually back down. But that night I saw headlights outside my house. Same black SUV I'd seen before. My phone buzzed with a message. "Even lions sleep. Mark, don't get too comfortable." I sent everything texts, drone footage, photos to my lawyer, Carla. She filed for a restraining order the next morning. The judge approved it that afternoon. Karen was legally barred from contacting me. Didn't stop her. She had a tow truck show up to haul off my patrol car. I stepped outside, badge on my belt. "Touch that car, and you'll be charged with theft of government property." The driver's face went pale. Karen stood down the street filming. I shouted, "You really want to keep doing this?" She didn't answer. She just walked away. A week later, the sheriff's department opened an investigation into her misuse of HOA funds. Turns out she'd been using community dues to pay for her private security and that tow truck. For a while, it got quiet. Too quiet. Then at dawn, I woke to real sirens, not the golf cart kind. 3 sheriff's cruisers parked outside Karen's house. Jim ran over breathless. "They're arresting her," he said. "Embezzlement, false reports. She faked evidence against you." I walked to the curb just as deputies led her out in handcuffs. Her blazer was wrinkled hair a mess, but her chin was high. When she saw me, she glared. "You think you've won, Davis? You just wait." I didn't answer. I just watched the car pull away, red and blue lights painting the street she once ruled. The following weeks felt strange, peaceful but heavy. The neighborhood started to heal. Jim got elected HOA president, and people finally smiled when they waved. For the first time since moving in, I could breathe. But one morning I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address. Typed neatly. You might have taken her down, it said, but she made friends before she left. The HOA isn't done with you. I stared at the paper for a long time. Maybe it was real. Maybe it was just a ghost of her influence. Either way, I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd seen worse than Karen Reynolds. Because at the end of the day, power without compassion isn't leadership, it's just control. And control always burns itself out.